Assalamu alaikum, friends. This is Dr. Orsi Azizi. I'm speaking from Tirana, Albania, today on the 20th of February 2020. The thing that I'm going to discuss, or the topic, will be about the Uyghur issue from an Islamic perspective. Now, as many of you know, I became in a way known throughout the world after my visit in China, Xinjiang, in August 2019, when I was invited by the Communist Party of China as a group of foreign journalists to visit the region of Xinjiang, and in a way to understand how China is treating its Muslim minorities there. During and after my visit in Xinjiang, I made a number of videos and I wrote articles showing in the way to the international community how China is fighting its Uyghur and other Turkic Muslim groups in Xinjiang, and how it is using the so-called vocational training centers that we in the West call concentration camps, in order to destroy the Muslim identity and the Turkic identity of the Muslims of Xinjiang. Now, the Chinese Communist Party has accused me of being a liar. I've written a number of articles. Two of them have been published in Turkey at Daily Sabah, where in these articles I appeal to the Muslim world to save the Uyghurs and Islam in China. I have delivered a number of lectures in universities in Canada. I've gone to the European Parliament and many other places where I have given my testimony towards what the Chinese government is doing against the Muslims of Xinjiang. However, in the past few months, I have noted a number of things. Number one is that while what China is doing with the Muslims in Xinjiang is a cultural genocide, and the Chinese government has, through its extremification regulation, declared war on Islam and Muslim identity in Xinjiang. On the other hand, I've noted that many Muslim countries are skeptical and do not support the Uyghur issue. On the other hand, Western governments, and in particular the American government, is trying to patronize the Uyghur issue, is trying to show itself like the government who cares about the Uyghurs. And in this way, the US government has and is sponsoring many Uyghur organizations to resist what China is doing in Xinjiang. While the American government and the President Trump administration is one of the most Islamophobic and anti-Muslim government in the history of the United States, a government that is supporting the destruction and the extermination of Palestinians and Palestine, a government that is suffocating Iran, a government that has threatened Turkey with economic destruction, this very government, when it comes to the issue of Uyghurs, shows itself as it is caring for the Muslims of China. As a historian that I am, I have to stress that what the US government is doing with the Uyghur issue is that they are using the Uyghur issue not to save the Uyghurs, not to save Islam in China, not because they care about Muslims of China, but the Americans are using the Uyghur issue in order to blackmail China and to force China to obey to US dictates when it comes to China's and United States global trade war. Americans, they do not love Uyghurs. I know thousands of Uyghurs throughout the world who have been classified as terrorists by US government and are not allowed to enter into the United States of America. I'm doing this video even because I read today an open letter that I think a British academician named Dr. David Tobin from University of Manchester wrote to the BBC. His letter, entitled An Open Letter to the BBC, What's Islam Got to Do with It?, shows in a way the Islamophobia that exists in many Western circles when it comes to the Uyghur issue. In this letter that Dr. David Tobin wrote, he said, Uyghurs and other Turkic-speaking minorities say it matters and ultimately is their identity we're talking about. Uyghur diaspora groups and scholars have been calling for journalists to take heed of the fact that the war that China is doing against Uyghurs is not a war on Islam, but a war on Uyghurs. He continues and says, according to one Uyghur scholar, he says, we are not all Muslims. According to another, there is much diversity among Uyghurs and other Turkic-speaking groups in Xinjiang. They feel you are misrepresenting their identity, and they are worried about the concrete effects of the misrepresentation. David continues in his letter to the BBC and writes, audience reception. The reality is that in an age of popular anxieties about terrorism and Islam, your audience is considerably more sympathetic to a war on Islam than cultural genocide or camps for people arbitrarily deemed untrustworthy. In my line of work, I encounter British people of left and right telling me that they are not interested in this issue because they don't like Muslims or don't like the religion. David continues in his letter to the BBC and says, your coverage does not cause that intolerance, but it cannot reach these people. It may even embolden them with a number example of Muslims behaving badly, and does so by misrepresenting basic facts about people's identity and governance of the region. Uyghurs in the UK and across Europe are concerned that representation of this issue may encourage discrimination here and give greater global support for the party state to pursue what they describe as a cultural genocide. Now, I've quoted only a few sentences from what David Tobin has written to the BBC as an example for people who are concerned about the Uyghur issue to understand that in the West there is a growing lobby of Islamophobes who are trying to distract Uyghurs from Islam and to not show to the world that what China is doing in Xinjiang against Uyghurs is not only a cultural genocide, but is a war on Islam. In my articles, that I've written for Daily Sabah in Turkey, I have proved by showing the videos that I recorded in the concentration camps in Xinjiang, by quoting even the extremification regulation of the Xinjiang Autonomous Uyghur Authority, that what the Chinese government is doing in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs is a fight against Islam. The Chinese government is trying to destroy not only the Uyghurs, but even other Turkic Muslims who live in the region, be them Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Turkmen, Tatar, and other people. Now, what is going on in the West is that while the United States of America and certain Western governments, like probably Great Britain, etc., they are in a way supporting the Uyghur issue. On the other hand, in these governments, there is an intense wave of hatred against Muslims and Islam. And these people do not want the Uyghurs to be who they are. In many presentations that I've had in many Western institutions, I have met many Uyghurs who get funded by US and other Western governments who are not Muslims. And not only this, I've seen many Uyghurs who hate Islam as much as the Communist Party of China does. I've seen some of these Uyghur leaders who not only do not believe in Islam, who not only eat pork and drink alcohol, but I have seen people who hate Islam and hate their own Uyghur people for being Muslim. I have met in Brussels, in Canada, Uyghurs who have insulted Islam in front of me, who have insulted Uyghur Muslims who live in Turkey, Uyghur Muslim ladies who wear hijab, and when I have been shocked by their attack on their Uyghur brothers and sisters who believe in God and practice their religion, they have told me, we do not want these people. And I've told to these people, but listen, if you do not love and like the Uyghurs who are Muslims, then why you do not join the Communist Party of China? What the CCP is doing with the Uyghurs at this very moment in Xinjiang is a cultural and religious genocide. When I visited Xinjiang, the Communist Party officials, they told to us very openly, and they demonstrated to us when we visited the concentration camps, that they have nothing against the Uyghurs. The problem the Communist Party of China has is with Islam. People that I interviewed in the concentration camps demonstrated and showed to us that the crime for which they were sent into these concentration camps was because they read the Quran, because they pray to Allah, because they believed that a true Muslim should pray 5 times per day, because they believed in the concept of destiny and halal, because they merit according to the Quran, and in few words, the people whom China is sending into concentration camps are people who believe in Allah and in Muhammad. Now, when we see people like David Tobin, who writes to the BBC and tells to BBC, please exclude Islam from your discussion about the Uyghurs. Because number one, I know some Uyghurs who live in the United Kingdom who they are no longer Muslim and hate Islam. And number two is that if we show to our Western public that Uyghurs are Muslims, this will raise the support for the Chinese government by our public opinion. This kind of letters prove to us and the world that there is a growing Islamophobia group in the West who wants to treat the Uyghur issue from an Islamophobic point of view. As I mentioned before, the Uyghur issue that today is being raised by the US government in its discussions and trade war with China is not about Islam. We know very well that people like Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, Senator Rubio and others, they are Zionist extremists. They are people who hate Muslims. There are people who hate Pakistan, who hate Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey. And these are the very people who support the anti-Muslim and fascist government of Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, who is bombing all the region and who is suffocating and committing a great genocide against the Palestinian people. Now, while we can understand that the Americans who are in a way speaking about the Uyghur issue are doing this not because they love Uyghurs and Islam, but for their own imperialist agenda, I want to address my Uyghur viewers in this video. Dear Uyghur friends, there is something that you have to bear in mind. Your names are Kadri, Mehmet, Mustafa, Enver, Murat and others. You come from Muslim families. The reason why you are being persecuted in Xinjiang, it is not because you are Uyghurs and you look different from the Chinese. The reason why you are being persecuted is because you are Muslims, is because you believe in Islam and in Allah. Many of these Western Islamophobes who tell you that you should forget Islam, and when you speak about China, you should speak about human rights issues only, these people, they're playing with you. These people want to do with you what the Chinese are already doing with you in Xinjiang. In Xinjiang, the Chinese authorities are not against you because you are Uyghurs and you speak a different language from them. The war that the Chinese government has declared on Uyghurs is because you have a different religion. And this different religion has given you a different identity. When the Chinese put you into concentration camps and they prohibit you from praying to Allah, and they force you to eat pork, and they force you to drink alcohol, they do exactly what many Uyghurs are already doing in the West. I have met many of these Uyghurs. Some live in the United States, some in Canada, some in the United Kingdom, who, when I show what the Chinese authorities are doing in the concentration camps in Xinjiang against Uyghurs only because they are Muslims, they get nervous with me and they tell me, please stop, do not mention Islam anymore. We are not Muslims, we have nothing to do with Islam. I tell to these people, like even to Dr. David, who is going to see my video, I'm sorry, sir, but this is what the Chinese government is doing. This is what the Chinese government is mentioning in its white papers. Now, if you want to hide the reality and you want to construct another reality that fits into the Western narrative, that is another story. You can lie as much as you want. But the truth is that the Uyghurs and other Turkic people of Xinjiang who are being sent into concentration camps and who are being treated as the Palestinians are being treated by the US and Israeli government in Palestine, the reason why you are being persecuted is only because you are Muslim. Now, I want to come back to another topic in this discussion. I have a lot of things to say, but of course I'm going to miss many of my points. But let me mention some other things for my Uyghur viewers. Always when I visit Uyghur communities from Turkey up to Canada and Europe, many Uyghurs complain to me and tell me, why does the Islamic world keep silence about the Uyghur issue? I have explained this in the past, but I want to explain it again now in this video for you. Number one, you have to bear in mind that the Muslim world, who is under Israeli and American attacks from Turkey up to Indonesia, sees Russia and China as their potential allies against American and Israeli aggression against the Muslim Ummah. Muslims every day see what Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, and other American evangelical and Zionist leaders are doing against Muslims. The US government has given the green light to the Israeli government to do any crime it wants, to even destroy Masjid al-Aqsa, the mosque, the holy mosque of Aqsa, in order to fulfill the stupid and fascist prophecies that Zionist and evangelical Christians believe. So when we go to Muslim countries and we tell them, hey sir, in China, in Xinjiang, we have our Muslim brothers and sisters who are being sent to concentration camps only because they're Muslims. It is very difficult for us to convince the Muslim Ummah to stand up against China while they have Americans bombing and putting their countries under embargo every day. Number two that you have to bear in mind is that the Muslim world sees that the Uyghur issue is promoted and defended by the worst enemies of Islam. Zionist fundamentalists, people like I mentioned before, Mike Pence, Pompeo, John Bolton, Jared Kushner, and what have you, who support Israel and Masjid al-Aqsa, are sometimes the very same people who speak about you. What do you think? Would a Muslim, Palestinian, Syrian, Malaysian, Iranian, Turkish feel and think when they see this psychopath, fascist American leaders talking about you? Is it good or bad? People will think, while these people speak about Uyghurs, then there should be something wrong with our Uyghur brothers and sisters. Number three, throughout my experience with the Uyghur issue and my travels throughout America, Europe, and Asia, I have noted something. Uyghurs lack an Islamic leadership. Many people who today speak about Uyghurs, they are secularists. Many of these people drink alcohol and do not pray to God. Many of these people get funding from the US government and other Western governments. And many of these people, very often, when they speak about the Uyghur issue, they take orders from the US government. When the Muslim world sees this, and when the Muslim world doesn't see an Islamic leadership among the Uyghurs, a leadership that will stand up for the Uyghurs and will talk to the world the reality, and will tell to the United States, shut up, and will tell to Western Europe, shut up, but will appeal to the Muslim Ummah, will appeal to Muslims in the name of Allah and Peygamber Muhammad, will appeal to the Muslims in the name of Quran and tell them, hey, brothers and sisters, please, let's do something to help our Muslim brothers and sisters in Xinjiang. When the Muslim world doesn't see an Islamic leadership from you, but sees secularist and sometimes even American puppets leaders who speak in the name of the Uyghur Muslims, they will be very skeptical about you. What the Americans are doing at this very moment is that they are using the Uyghur issue against China as part of the American imperialist war against China. The Uyghurs are being used by the West as the Chechens were used against Russia, as the Kosovars were used against Yugoslavia, as many Christian groups were used by the West in Egypt, Lebanon, Indonesia against their countries, or how the Kurds are being used against Turkey, Iran, and Iraq at present. The West has a very long tradition of using and misusing Muslim minorities for their imperialist goal. What they are doing at this present moment, they're using the Uyghurs as a card in the trade war that the United States is fighting against China. I have told to many Uyghur friends that I meet them around the world is that the love of the United States towards you is not a sincere love. They are using you like they use Christians in the Middle East, like they use the Kurds in the Middle East, like they use minorities throughout the world, like they used Kosovars for the destruction of Kosovo. But when the Americans created a colony state called Kosovo, they removed Islam from the identity of the Kosovars. They jailed many Muslim believers and imams. And what is happening today in Kosovo is not much different from what was happening in Kosovo in the time of Serbia and Yugoslavia. On the other hand, I have seen in many European countries that I visited and in Canada that there is a growing Turcophobia among many Uyghurs who are in a way funded or supported by Western governments. In Canada, I have seen Zionist evangelical Protestant preachers, people who hate and curse Islam and Muhammad, people who hate the Arabs, but who are very close to US senators like Rubio and other politicians, who instruct the Uyghurs to insult Turkey, to insult Islam, and to not be Muslim. I've seen many Uyghurs in the West who insult Turkey, and this thing has shocked me very much. I've told to many of these Uyghur friends that I've met, why do you insult Turkey? Or they tell me, Turkey is not fighting China for us. I tell them, excuse me, why France? Why the United States? Why Great Britain? Why Germany is not fighting with China? Why do you expect Turkey to go to war with China? Turkey is doing more than it can bear and do for the Uyghurs. In Turkey, we have thousands of Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters who have taken Turkish citizenship. These people live freely in Turkey. Turkey has opened its arm for its Uyghur Muslim brothers and sisters, and is probably the only country in this planet and in the Muslim world who is really and sincerely helping the Uyghurs. Turkey is not a superpower. Turkey doesn't have an atomic bomb. Turkey is not a neighbor of China. Turkey cannot fight China for you. You have to know this. Turkey is a second-class world power, is a regional power who have so many problems. With all the problems that it has, with the hostility that it faces from America and the United States, Turkey is the mother of all the Uyghurs in the world. I've seen in Turkey all kinds of Uyghur people who have taken asylum in this country, have built their lives, are growing their kids, and do not face the discrimination that they face in many Western countries, in the United States and in Canada. I've seen many Uyghurs in Canada, in the West and in Turkey, who are not allowed to enter the United States, who, when they get their visas or when they are Canadians, they go to the US border, they cannot enter and they get arrested as terrorists. I've seen Uyghurs who cannot even board a plane to go to Turkey or to go to Europe because US authorities have put them in a no-fly list. But Turkey does not do this thing with you, brothers and sisters. You have to understand that those people among you who speak against Turkey, they are either Islamophobes and people who already have left Islam and they hate Turkey because Turkey is Muslim, or secondly, is because they are Western or Chinese agents. Now, in conclusion, what I want to tell to you is based on this article from David Tobin that pushed me to make this video today, is I want to let you know that there is a growing trend in the West, a growing Islamophobic trend in the West, where many Western governments, especially the American government, is promoting many anti-Muslim Uyghurs, people who come from Muslim families, but now they have left Islam. And these people are being promoted as leaders of Uyghur communities. These people want you, other Uyghurs who live in diaspora outside of China, to renounce Islam. What these people are doing with you is exactly what the Communist Party of China is doing with you. The Communist Party of China, who sends you to concentration camps, want you to not be a Muslim anymore. When I meet many of these Uyghur Islamophobes, I tell them, hey brothers, why don't you go back to Xinjiang? The Communist Party of China is going to love you very much, and maybe is going even to make you directors in Xinjiang and directors of the concentration camps to direct the Chinese government agenda on de-Islamizing the Uyghurs. If you people hate Islam, you are no longer Uyghurs. My Muslim brothers and sisters, who are from Hotan, from Kashgar, from Urumqi, and wherever you come from, the thing that made you Uyghurs and made you a nation in Xinjiang, it is not your face, because you come from different ethnic groups. You speak different dialects. You have different faces. Some of you look like Chinese, some others look like Europeans. The thing that made you Uyghurs is Islam. You guys have Turkic language, you have Turkic history, you are the original Turks, you are the people who brought civilization to the Turkic world, you are the empire builders, and the thing that made you what you are, it was Islam. You write your language in Arabic alphabet, in the alphabet of the Quran. Many of your words are Arabic. Your names, like Nurgul, and I don't know, you have very beautiful names. They're all Islamic names. Those people in the West, and Orientalists like David Tobin and others, who are pushing a Western agenda to wipe out your Islamic identity, these people, they're exactly like the Chinese government, the Communist Party officials of Xinjiang. They're trying to do the same thing with you. They're trying to assimilate you. While the Chinese want to convert you into Chinese, these people, they want you to be not Muslim anymore. But if you are not a Muslim anymore, then you are not going to be Uyghurs. If you do not teach your children your language, Uygurcha, if you're not going to teach your children to write and read in your Arabic script, if you do not send your children to mosques and to learn Quran, you must know very well that after 1 or 2 generations, you will be no longer Uyghurs. You are going to be Canadians, you are going to be Americans, you are going to be French or whatever, but you are not going to be Uyghurs anymore. The thing that keeps you Uyghurs is Islam. Those people in the West, like David Tobin and many others that I've seen, and some of them are even Uyghurs who live, I've seen them, they live in London, in Canada, United States, and what have you. Those people who want you to renounce Islam, those people who teach you when you talk to Western media to say, oh, I'm here because the Chinese have jailed and imprisoned my sister, but I have nothing to do with Islam. These people are exactly like the Chinese. Now, you have 2 options before you. Option number 1 is to remain Uyghur. But to remain Uyghur, you have to be Muslim. I've seen some Uyghurs who have converted into Christianity, who, when they go to Western universities, they speak against Islam. They show how Uyghur Muslims killed Christians. These people are Islamophobes, like the Communist Party officials in China. Now, to make something clear between you and us, the reason why I have spoken about the Uyghur issue, and I continue and will continue to do so, is because I'm a Muslim and you're Muslims. There are many aboriginal groups in the world who have been destroyed, assimilated, and exterminated by different nations and states. We have in Australia, we have in Canada, in United States, throughout the world, where the Anglo-American imperialism destroyed many nations and tribes and states. The European, the Russian, the Chinese imperialism have also destroyed many nations and states. But the reason why I decided to go against China and speak for you is not because I got paid by NID or by CIA or FBI or what have you. The reason why I spoke about you is because I'm Muslim, I believe in Allah, and I feel that you are my brothers and sisters. Number two is, if you want to be successful in your Uyghur issue, you have to bear in mind something. You should never be tools of American imperialism. The Americans are going to misuse and dump you. When I was in Canada, I met a Zionist preacher who was telling to me that evangelical Christians have started praying for Xinjiang and Uyghurs, and who was very close to many US government officials. And I told him, sir, why you love so much the Uyghurs, why the United States doesn't give some weapons to these people? Told me, no, we cannot do that with Uyghurs because then China is going to push North Korea to attack South Korea. So they are not sincere with you. They only use you. Americans and NATO is never going to bomb China and to liberate Xinjiang. They use you guys for their economical benefits, for their trade war with China. The only group of people in this planet who can sincerely support you, and who many American officials hated, and many Zionist and evangelical preachers hated, the only group of people who can help you is the Muslim Ummah. But for the Muslim Ummah to help you, you have to know how to approach them. You have to build an Islamic leadership. You have to approach Muslim groups from the Ikhwan al-Muslimin or the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the Arab world. You have to get closer to the Turkish government. You have to communicate with the Iranian government. You have to communicate with the Pakistanis, with Malaysians, with Bosnians, and with so many Muslims throughout the world, and present to them your plight. What is going on with you is a crime against humanity. The Chinese are exterminating you through the concentration camps, through the colonization of your homes, through forced labor, through colonization of your region, through the stealing of your properties, and so many other things that they are doing against you. The West is only talking whenever Trump wants to sign a trade deal with China. When they reach their trade deals, you are being shelved, you are being forgotten. But what you should do is you should build an Islamic leadership. You should show your solidarity with the Palestinians, with the Kashmiris, with Pakistanis, with Turks, and everyone else in the Muslim Ummah. And tell to the Muslim Ummah what China is doing with you. Of course, the Muslim Ummah cannot and probably will not go to war with China and cannot do that for you. But what the Muslim Ummah can do is that they can approach the Chinese government and tell to them, listen, we know what you are doing with our Muslim brothers and sisters in Xinjiang. That is very bad. You, China, want to be a partner with us. On the other hand, the Americans are using the Uyghurs to destabilize you. So the Muslim Ummah can put an embargo on China, which China cannot afford it, or they even can convince China. They can tell to China, China, please, for the sake of our friendship, for the sake of our trade, for the sake of our future, for the sake of our resistance towards Western imperialism, please open up Xinjiang, open up the mosques, release these people from prisons and concentration camps, and let these people enjoy their religion and freedom. But for this to be realized, you must approach the Muslim Ummah. I've seen, brothers and sisters, many of your Uyghur activists in the West. Some of them, they are very good, very fine people. But unfortunately, very often it is not them who set the agenda for you. It is the Americans. You should not allow yourself to be assimilated in the West, to be de-Islamized in the West. If you think that you don't need Islam anymore, that you are not Muslim anymore, my suggestion to you is go to the first Chinese embassy that you have in your country. Tell them, hello Chinese, we're no longer Muslims, we don't need concentration camp, we can drink alcohol and eat pork, we don't believe in Allah but we'll praise Xi Jinping. The Chinese are going to give you passports and you are going to have a very good life in Xinjiang. If you think that you are not Muslim anymore, please go back to Xinjiang, go and kiss the Chinese officials, and they are not going to harm you anymore. But if you are Muslim, then you have to stand up for your Muslim brothers and sisters in Xinjiang. The Uyghur issue is an Islamic issue, and I hope and pray that Muslim brothers and sisters from throughout the world who are going to see this video are going to understand that the big game that the United States and China are playing with the Uyghurs. On one hand, we have the Chinese who are trying, the Chinese government, not the Chinese, who are trying to exterminate these people. On the other hand, we have the Americans who are throwing the Uyghurs into fire, and they're saying, look, China is persecuting the Uyghurs. But for us as Muslims, the situation is very different. We have to approach the Uyghur issue from an Islamic perspective. We have to tell to the West, don't play with our Muslim brothers and sisters. Do not use them as stooges in your war against China. And on the other hand, we have to appeal to our Chinese friends to come to their senses, to open Xinjiang, and to stop the discrimination of Muslims and the persecution of Islam in Xinjiang. Thank you very much indeed, and hope to see you again in my future videos.